So, Dr. Hoaraeu, why don't you introduce yourself to these guys?
Hi, I'm Guillaume. I'm a veterinarian. I specialize in emergency and critical care, and my big passion of my job is caring for working dogs and hopefully working on understanding what their issues are so we can treat them better, but also ideally prevent them ultimately.
The love of dogs, right? I mean, that's the common denominator right there.
Yeah.
No better job in law enforcement, in my opinion.
It's changed the way I am with my family as well as my community, and you know, if I could be, like you mentioned earlier, if I could have like just a 1% of the amount of joy that our dogs have working, and I could bring it into what I do, it's much better. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember one patient I had once that really demonstrated to me the bond between the handler and the dog. And it was a dog that was acutely sick. He was struck by a car while chasing a suspect, and this dog was taken care of at the site of injury and then transported to us. And during transport, the firefighters who helped out provided outstanding care, and the dog was treated successfully. And seeing how grateful the handler was afterward to have his canine returned to him was, to me, a great realization to see that not only those dogs have an important job in our society, but also the bond they have, because I think it's fair to say that this is not a dog, this is a partner, this is a police officer.
The bond that we have is unbelievable.
What fascinates me with working dogs is that there's a plethora of them out there with different jobs. And so here, for instance, we have an officer that does narcotic search, but also patrol work. We have dogs who will sniff explosive devices, who would smell shell casing, looking for bodies as well. And so all those dogs have very different jobs that are all important jobs, and we heavily rely on those. Unfortunately, with those responsibilities, there are a lot of risks that are associated to it. And what I'm dreaming of is that we reach the best possible care for those animals between the time of the injury all the way to the treatment in the hospital, because a dog like him could be shot, could be stabbed, or he could be searching for narcotics and ingesting a large amount of opioids and having an overdose potentially. You know, we have had other canines that are operating in more remote areas that could be stabbed, for instance, and hemorrhaging in the field where they are very, very far from any kind of medical care. So the handlers have to be trained on how to provide care for their partners the same way they are trying to provide care for their human partners, and trying to answer questions such as how are we going to evacuate the dog from the point of injury to the nearest vet. And also, I really want to emphasize the importance of having a relationship with your local veterinarians, because if you know that you're operating mostly in a given area, you need to have very tight relationship with the vets, because the vets have to be comfortable with caring for working dogs, and they need to be able to respond to the injury that your pet is exposed to potentially. And so really what fascinates me and motivates me is to improve the care of those guys from prevention through treatment at the point of injury all the way to definitive care in a veterinary hospital. How do we treat an animal where the handler may not be able to be present? And that is a challenge, and I think it goes back to what the dog's function is, because right now we're having a good time because Officer Diaz is here. I suspect if you weren't here, we would have a different experience, because
Maybe.
those dogs are trained to take control of the situations that are challenging. Now, many dogs do not do patrol work, and so if we're thinking about a dog that only does explosive searches or search and rescue, those animals can be approached, I would say, like any other dogs. But when it comes to those animals, as first responders or veterinarians, we have to be trained and prepared to care for those animals in the absence of the handlers, because unfortunately, due to the nature of their job, they may be incapacitated as well. At the moment, I'm very fortunate that I can balance my time between clinical work and in emergency and critical care, and research in the field of trauma and critical illness and most of my research at the moment is for the US Air Force. I see every small animal patients, dogs or cats, but definitely if there is a working canine in the line, I'll make sure they get outstanding care. Yeah, I do provide training to firefighters and EMS, and I think that those working dogs are very similar to patrol dogs in that they are trained to protect their body, and their body in that case could be sheep or goats, and we should approach them the same way, understanding that they have a job and we have to protect ourselves, protect them. And when it comes to caring for those dogs, understanding that they have a job is a great way to protect us, but it's also a great way to ensure that they can go back to work as soon as possible. Because if I keep your partner in the hospital for a week, that's a week where you don't have your partner, and unfortunately the way life is chances are that's the week where you would need him the most. And my job when we care for those animals is to make sure that we provide them with the best possible care and we return them to work as soon as possible, which also means we have to develop and improve our care to prevent injuries. And one of the examples is gastric dilation, evolvulus or bloat, which I'm sure you guys know are well aware of, is a huge problem in working dogs. And as a community, the veterinary profession is working on ways to prevent that from happening so that we don't lose the animal due to the disease, but for those who survive the disease, they don't have a prolonged recovery time where they are not operational. The first thing I emphasize is always identifying what the job of the officer is. And so it would be a simple question: hi, what's your dog's name and what's his job?
Right, Pharaoh, he's a patrol and narcotics dog.
Alright, and so already I heard the word patrol, which to me already triggers some safety measures where I will definitely ask the officer, am I safe to touch your dog and look at him, or do you think we should muzzle him first?
That's dependent on the situation, right? If it's a high stress situation, he might not be in the mood.
Yeah.
But if, like now, you could obviously touch him, say hi, hug him. And they're pretty much light switches.
Yeah.
It's the way we treat them. Especially, we know our handlers, or we know our partners that well that I know when he's on and when he's off. So I could definitely communicate that to someone who's going to provide care.
Yeah.
Right?
And when in doubt, I would say always let's put the muzzle on the dog. Always better be safe than
Right.
sorry.
And in the event that the officer handler's down, that dog's number one job is to protect. So his senses are going to be up, and an even more dangerous situation because he's there to protect that officer who may or may not be able to communicate with him.
The first thing I would say is to make sure we don't escalate the situation. And so if his canine is protecting him and it might be safer to actually not engage. And the next step for me would be to ask the surrounding officers, does anyone here know this canine? Does anyone know how to de-escalate this situation? And usually there's a good buddy system in every police department where someone else in the group will be able to help de-escalate the situation so that we can care both for the officer but also for the canine as needed. But definitely those dogs, when they are trained for patrol work, their job is to protect overall, and so we do not want to escalate the situation by engaging when not required.
I mean, just safety is the number one thing. I mean, it's for everybody involved, including the animal. I mean, that's our goal, is to get treatment, whatever it is, and to not get hurt while we're doing it.
It's information sharing, I believe, is one of the most important things that the doctors are providing.
I think my ultimate dream would be to advance knowledge in veterinary medicine as far as we can, to be able to prevent injury. That's the ideal scenario for anyone providing care, but also providing training at different level to the handlers, to the first responders, firefighters, EMT, lay individuals, so that if something happens, the best possible care is provided at the point of injury, because we know that the earlier care is provided, the better the outcome. And then making sure that all the way down to the veterinary hospital, the entire caring team understands the societal importance of those dogs, but also the bond between the handler and the canine, because I think that it's fair to say that if something happens to your dog and someone comes to care for your dog, you'll be expecting them to provide the same care as they would provide to a human. And so we need to
Absolutely.
know about that.
Absolutely.